All right, so let's drill down into Larry Fink's brain today. We're going to do this. He did a big interview at a Bloomberg event, and it breaks down a lot of not only his ideas of where the markets is going, but also some of the technologies within crypto that are going to affect all of this. I'll break it down for you guys today. My name is Paul Barron. Welcome back into Tech Path. All right, let's get into our first clip. And this first clip is breaking down interest rates over the next few years, what it looks like from the man himself, Larry Fink. Listen in.
You have Jamie Dimon, for example, saying rates in the U.S. could go to 7%, and we're not ready for it. Is he right?
Look, we all have opinions. I mean, I've been saying for over a year.
I want to know your opinion, Larry.
My opinion is we're going to have 10-year rates at least at 5% or higher.
All right, so you heard it, higher, longer, 10-year rates, holding on to that, but yet still very, optimistic in terms of the overall position, so a little bit more hopeful. Rick Ryder, who is one of the key investment guys there at BlackRock, who manages like almost $3 trillion in assets, he also came in on this clip. Listen into what he had to say.
So I think there's a couple of things that are going to happen. I think when the Fed starts, and I think they'll start cutting rates in the second half of the year. I don't think they're in any rush that
second
they
half
need
of
to do
this
it.
year.
Second half next year.
Okay.
Sorry.
Just want to make sure.
Thank you for that clarification.
Yeah.
Like, I would have been buying stocks.
Yeah. So.
All right, so he's looking toward the third quarter next year. We talked about that before, is that most likely will be the case with this higher for longer approach that goes into this. Now, the key here is what is causing this? Now, what are we seeing this in terms of the market disarray, the pushback, the consumer spending that's been holding inflation high? They get into it a little bit here around wages being too high. Listen in.
The whole idea about restricting immigration. And in the United States, we've had close to $1 trillion of fiscal stimulus just beginning its J curve. These are huge job creators. And at the same time, we have restricted immigration. And as a result of it, we see more wage pressure. So at what cost? We have in the United States a very protracted strike between the auto workers and the auto companies. It has been reported that the union is asking for a 40% increase. So at what cost?
What do you do with a problem like this?
Right now, I think in our megatrend said, right now we are underinvested in China.
Underinvested in China, that's interesting. Okay, so a couple points here to make, and also to kind of reference is the framework of why these strikes are occurring, especially with the United Auto Workers strike. You look at it, and it really boils down to corporate greed. I mean, at the essence, you've got all these car companies who have been feasting on American consumers for quite some time, for the last couple of years. Here's Stellantis as an example, all the way back to 2016 when they were kind of flat, and then right there, 2018 blows up. Obviously, we saw the impact on the markets, and then just this continued climb of Stellantis stock price. Now, part of that has been just because obviously car sales have continued. So his point of that wages are too high, that this is causing a lot of disarray within the market, there's an alternative to that as well. Let's go to this next clip because Biden, actually it's a article here, Biden actually responded to a little bit of this issue around the UAW. Remember, he's very pro-union, but his statement was, he asked if he supported the 40% increase on the union had asked for, and he said, hey, listen, it's really more of a bargaining chip, really, than anything. And I would agree, because it's kind of you ask for the highest amount you can, and then you settle in with where it may end up. And I think that's what Stellantis is going to end up doing here as we go further. Remember, the key here with Fink is if you are very pro, and I'm pro-capitalist, guys, don't get me wrong, but if you're a super capitalist, meaning you are absolutely just wanting to run amok within corporate greed, then you do want a lot of immigrants coming into the country, and you want these kinds of, mainly from an optic standpoint, because it does start to put pressure on the American workers. And I think that's the thing that everybody's looking at is how do we keep job wages low? And when I say everyone, meaning these capitalists that are really pushing at this. So this gets into some pretty big issues right here. Even though he's asking for more immigration, I want to play this next clip to show you just kind of where immigration currently is. Let's listen in.
In just 1 week, they came by the thousands, group after group after group of migrants streaming into Eagle Pass, Texas, prompting the border town to declare a state of emergency. and straining the nation's immigration system again. The Border Patrol encountered a record 2.2 million people crossing the border illegally. The numbers went down a bit in the fiscal year ending this month, but are still high.
Anybody that thinks this is a secure border is delusional.
And this is something you see every day.
Oh, this is every day.
All right, so as you can see there, does it look like we're restricting immigration at all? I think his point is really more toward the whole idea of, higher wages being pressured, getting into that side of it. All right, so let's get into this next clip that talks about the recession and whether or not it's going to be bad, good, all that good stuff. Listen to what he had to say.
Does that mean we are headed for a recession right now?
I think we're going to see some economies enter recessions early.
Which ones would that be?
Well, I think Europe
Is anyone's more sensitive to
the ones that are more sensitive to this elevated interest rates. Whatever the recessions we're going to have, they're going to be quite modest. So I'm not even that fearful. In many areas, you may need a recession to bring down labor demand.
All right, so again, back to the point he's talking about, that's profitability in a lot of companies. If you bring down labor demand, that's one of the biggest issues there. He also gets into the point of what could be the catalyst to cause a longer recession play into this. Here's what he had to say.
So throughout history of U.S. growth slowdowns, we have underestimated every single one of them. Are you confident we're not making that same mistake again?
If fear becomes worse, then consumers pull back and the recessions are going to become more protracted. We have elections in so many places of the world. We are going to have many political candidates who are going to provide a lot of fear.
Yes.
I think the political winner is the one who provides the most hope for the future, or what people believe the hope for the future.
Do you see that, though? Do you see anyone projecting hope?
I dearly hope so. I'm projecting hope.
Larry for president? I don't know.
No, I'm too young.
That is.
I love that. All right, so I want to get into an area around reimagining bank lending. And this is where it starts to get into crypto, or at least the underlying efforts of what he's thinking about crypto, because this is going to be kind of that format of how crypto will start to integrate into the banking system. Listen to what he had to say.
We need to reimagine finance because of Dodd-Frank in the United States. Banks can't lend.
And more of that, the world is awash in debt.
To developing countries.
Sure.
They lend well, but
All right, so obviously that's where, stablecoins, DeFi, this starts to solve all those problems that we're going to be looking at around tokenized assets. I want to go to a clip here from Bankless asking really what's holding this back. Listen into what they had to say in this interview.
What you're buying today when you buy a stablecoin, on the back end, it's cash and cash equivalents. That's accounting term to say treasuries, repos, and some cash in banks. The thing that is not flowing through is the yield component. So you're getting a 0% yield on your stablecoins today. So I started looking someone has to have built something that solves this problem, and no one had. The big challenge here is how do you bridge these two worlds, giving clarity on the real world asset side. So someone has to hold a treasury bill, and that person who's buying those treasury bills, at small scale you can buy, but if you're starting to buy anything at meaningful scale, you have to show where the money came from. And that where the money came from, the compliance AML KYC component was hard to do. So we said, okay, if we want to offer this, you have to be regulated to do this at scale. And that is the biggest challenge that everyone in this industry faces. It's how do you answer that regulatory or legal structuring question?
It sounds like what you're trying to build is the largest pipe possible between the government, United States government risk-free rate, and DeFi. And right now you're saying that this pipe is actually constrained by our current stablecoin paradigm, or the current meta of stablecoins, because you go through it vanilla dollars first, when really you can just go more, let's get right to the punchline of this whole thing, which is let's take the yield of the risk-free rate and get it into DeFi.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right. So this is why stablecoin legislation is so important to help drive the future of tokenized assets in general. If you look at tokenized treasuries, here's a good example of just how big this market is. You can kind of see the growth right here all the way back from just January 2023 and where we're going. And again, a lot of these major companies and institutional finance involved in that. And then here's a breakdown of a lot of the blockchains that are, of course, out there. They're stellar. Ethereum all over the place, Polygon, and then even Solana is also in here, even though they're not listed. But this is a good example of just continued growth. Further into this, you'll see private credit on DeFi rails starting to explode as well. So you see active loans, total value loans, etc. But look at this explosion. Now, granted, some of this will start to moderate just because of what we've seen within the market pressures of interest rates, inflation, all those kind of things. But again, it gets back to this whole theory, this whole concept of tokenizing assets and really tokenizing securities, all the things that eventually traditional finance will be able to accomplish with blockchain. So a lot in the wings here. Here's Ripple releasing this coincidentally at the same time as this interview with Larry Fink and explaining, hey, they've got a solution for this. So listen into this next clip right here. It'll start to make sense.
Integrating digital asset solutions is complex. It often requires cumbersome integrations, has high costs, and involves engaging with fragmented, slow, and costly fiat payout landscape. At Ripple, we built Liquidity Hub to seamlessly bridge the new world of digital assets with the traditional world of fiat. The experience is plug and play. Liquidity Hub powers interoperability between crypto and fiat systems, bridging digital assets seamlessly. Partner with Ripple.
All right, so let's go back over to the clips from Larry Fink talking about the risk levels involved. Listen in.
Are there risks in that?
Could there be risk? I'm not trying to suggest there are not risks. Is there new risk when you have these big pools of money in capital markets? Unquestionably. The transmission is going to be very quick, quicker than the banking system, because the banks have other businesses, and if somebody in the private market is just providing a loan and there's no other interconnection, then they're going to have to do the right thing on behalf of their owners of capital. As a fiduciary, they're going to have to call a loan, they're going to have to repossess property or whatever that may be. I'm not saying that's a risk at all. What I'm trying to say, we need to talk about what are the dynamics, what are the changes are when there is a real ecosystem change. And so right now, I don't see any risk. In fact, I think the Federal Reserve came out with a position paper saying there's actually less risk because there's less leverage in this system by doing that.
You got to be careful here because I think with Fink, he's talking and pitching his own book. Obviously, BlackRock's going to win big on and when this does occur. In fact, they could be the ones that set the architecture for all this. I'm going to put together a few clips here that kind of lead you into this next layer around government and how it plays into this. But let's go to this first clip right here on undue risk. Listen in.
Do you see people taking undue risk, not applying that lens that you're talking about that concerns you?
You can't avoid risk. In fact, those who avoid risk make no returns. Every moment there's some people taking undue risk. Some of them are wildly successful. It's not about risk. It's about, does it impinge on the economy? Does it impinge on society?
All right, so let's get into his thoughts on how the government is so slow. Listen in.
Is that just a regulation issue? There's too much regulation in general? Is that what you're saying?
Regulation is fine if can it be more immediate? But why can't we, with new technology, why can't we get the review process in weeks instead of 7 years? That's what we need. If we can move the review process down from years to weeks, I promise you, hope will be flourishing because we're going to be able to do things faster.
All right, so you can kind of see, let's throw the red tape out, let's get out of my way. Government needs to be much more minimalized. All right, so when you look at government and how this is all going to be played, there's a lot of research that is underway right now. Here's the Naval Postgraduate School starting to go into this and look at the integration of how blockchain is going to play into this, and also just in general some of the effects that it's going to have. Further into this, of the report itself, they were going into the benefits of smart contracts. So let me kind of zoom in on this section right here. So smart contracts offer numerous benefits. If you're watching our show, you probably know quite a bit about smart contracts. But if you do not, what I would just do right now is go out, do some research on smart contracts, how they work, some of the projects that are very effective with it. But what they're talking about is the autonomy. Smart contracts allow the creation of digital and direct agreements between two parties without an intermediary, meaning without a bank. Trust, that's another major factor that's going to play into this. Backup, safety, speed, savings, and accuracy. All of these are benefits of what smart contracts do. And smart contracts will change the financial system. They'll also change business as a whole, because this is, just step back and just think about this. This is the evolution of the next internet. It's the evolution of how people communicate, but being able to do it in a trustless system. That's what blockchain really brings to the game. So it's going to be a big one. Further into this, you have the USFCR coming in, online registration, saying, hey, wait a minute, we've got a whole idea around how federal contractors could also apply into this. And then when you look at some of the things that they break down, it says, as U.S. government continues to explore possibilities of Web3, next-gen internet technology, it's turning to smart contracts. Okay, good. This provides greater security and transparency and makes it easier to track funds and comply with federal regulations. This is where I think it might break down, and that is, it's easier to track funds. Could you imagine the federal government actually having to be responsible for tracking funds of actually where it went? Ooh, okay, if anything, that might be a problem. But the point is, it can be done. Blockchain could solve those kinds of problems. And whether or not we get a government that's willing to do that, that's going to be another question, probably for another video for sure. Just as a reminder, Visa, I'll go back to this. We did a whole video on this, by the way. Visa did a deep dive on Solana primarily, but they were looking at blockchain networks in general. And I'll go down here, I'll scan down to all the different chains that they looked at. Primarily what they were looking at is speed, capacity, etc. Simply meaning, hey, if we do decide to use blockchain for payments, what kind of chains could we utilize out there? You see Solana is right there at the number one slot, approximate time, lightning fast, Avalanche right behind them, Flow, Algorand, Stellar, etc. These were all tested. Solana is the test that's underway, and it's a big test because this is either going to explode Solana or it's going to cause Solana to fall on its face, meaning it's not capable of handling these kinds of scale. So let's go to our next clip because this gets into Solana and our friends Polygon. Listen in.
CKVM is the product that I'm actually lead of. And that's the one that is the genesis of all these products that are coming together within Polygon to create that multi-chain world. We have the layer 2s, which is the layer that we are concerned about. We are actually a scaling solution for Ethereum.
I mean, to keep things spicy, I'll say that there's going to be kind of a single chain, a single execution environment, and it won't really matter how many settlement environments there are, kind of like it doesn't matter where USDC actually, which bank USDC finally settles in. But what matters is where like all the peer-to-peer or like merchant to consumer transactions occur. And within 20 years, we are going to see 1,000x improvement in hardware. So we're going to see 1,000x more capacity on a layer 1 that's a single giant atomic state machine. Usually things are cheaper and faster, kind of more composable when they're in one place.
At Polygon Labs, we believe in definitely a world that is multi-chain, and it is where we're heading as Polygon 2.0 will actually come forward.
I don't think that the CEOs or the boards of these Fortune 500 companies are going to care about crypto until they see like at least 1 to 2, maybe 5% of their revenues to be crypto related. Solana working with Visa, and Visa choosing Solana to do like settlement with USDC for cross-border transactions. That's a very powerful disruptive use case. And my hope is that, they actually start seeing their own real revenues impacted by this. And then like that kind of opens the door for everything else.
Now, I will say this. I mean, that's Anatoly, of course, Solana's lead man. The idea behind what Solana is trying to do is absolutely right. He's hitting it on all the front points. I would agree with that. At the same time, he's very confident, by the way, very confident in his statements here around the success or the success of the test that's going to happen with Visa. But this is where it gets interesting, because if they don't achieve this success at the level in which what he even mentioned, to be able to gain notice from major CEOs, Fortune 500 companies, because that's one of the things that I talk with a lot of CEOs out there today. We do a lot of consulting in that area. And that's the number one question they always ask me. Is it big enough to really make an impact? Just like digital sales were for e-com, all those kind of things. It has to hit that bottom line for crypto to be a force in the next evolution of the internet. So I would agree with all that. It's all on Solana's back to win it or lose it. And of course, you get into the whole idea of tokenization and how this plays out. We're gonna go to another clip here in a minute, but I do want to jump over to this article right here Circle intervenes, of course, in Binance's SEC case, arguing stablecoins aren't securities. Again, this gets back into the whole point that we're dealing with getting regulation involved, because stablecoin settlement is going to be very, very, very important in being able to make this leap forward. So I know we're getting into kind of the technical side of this, but just think, it's very simple in the essence of, just think about the internet. Without the framework for the internet to occur, we would have never had mobile, we would have never had e-commerce. None of the things you're doing on social would have never occurred. That's exactly where blockchain is right now. And what Anatoly was talking about, along with what Polygon was talking about, they think it's going to be multi-chain, where Anatoly thinks it's going to be these super chains, possibly that really isolate in on high transactions, all those kind of things. So it's going to be interesting. And of course, stablecoins will be a part of that. And obviously USDC, one of the biggest ones out there. We'll go to this last clip, which is kind of interesting because it changes the game here a little bit on what Fink, because up to now, I won't spoil it for you, but up to now he said a certain framework, and he's also had a certain theme that he's going into. Let's play this last clip.
We're 44 hours away right now from a U.S. government shutdown. They've been unable to come together on that. I mean, they're...
Yes. What do you want me to say?
I just don't know how you...
I'm not in favor of a shutdown.
Are we still in a place where a default is likely? I know the shutdown is separate from that, but if that's the track we're headed on, is a default still possible for the American economy?
Let's hope not.
Man, you see his face right there. I would almost like to freeze it. He got really serious right before that. Can we step that back a couple of frames? I don't know. But the point is his face right there, there it is. This guy is like, wait a minute, this is going to be causing a potential problem. And you have to think about $9 trillion in assets going into the market, liquidity, all the trickling effects into the market economically that this could potentially evolve. Maybe Fink knows something that all of us don't really know, and that is, how close are we to really a big devastating blow to the economy of the United States if this shutdown does occur. So this is a lot. I know it's a lot here for you guys to cover. Hopefully this gets your head around what's happening, though. The big narrative of this whole video, hopefully as for you, is to understand the dominoes that are kind of starting to fall and the connection points that need to happen in crypto blockchain to really make this next leap forward. And when you guys got people like Larry Fink in the game, understanding how this works, and he's not saying blockchain, but he's talking about all the aspects of how blockchain is going to change finance, you can start to paint a picture real quickly of the projects you need to be looking at. So pay attention out there, guys. This is how it all comes together. It's how you get in early on many of these things. So that'll pretty much wrap this one up. If you guys are not part of our Diamond Circle, make sure and get in. We do another podcast over there. We drop some additional content. You're going to love it. Drop or just hit the link down below. Make sure and hit the like button right now. And if you do like these kind of videos, smash the like button on your way out. And if you guys want to catch me, it's out there on Twitter or X @Paul Barron. We'll catch you next time right here on TechPath.